You probably know already that Cardano smart contract execution is fully deterministic. This, however, raises an interesting question: how to deal with time? Asking for the current time usually breaks determinism because asking the same question at different moments may lead to different answers and thus different execution paths. So, how to introduce time in script validation transactions? Cardano decouples transaction validation into two phases, and we typically refer to them as phase 1 validation and phase 2 validation. Phase 1 validations are structural checks on a transaction performed by the ledger. For example, this is when the ledger verifies that inputs referenced in a transaction are valid, that minimum amounts for fees and outputs are met, etc. Okay. Among the available features of a transaction are validity intervals that define a period after which and until the ledger can consider the transaction valid. So this is, I think, important. This is what a validity range is. Among the available features, there's validity range that defines a period after which and until a ledger can be considered valid. So that is literally they're mentioning this range right here. There is another one we opened. So for say for example, instead of transaction range, we'll call this validity range.
See, this
Okay.
is what I was thinking about. Okay.
And this is the lower bound, this is the upper bound, and that's exactly what these guys are saying. There's a lower bound and upper bound, and the transaction will be valid within these bounds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The validity interval is made of a lower bound optional and upper bound optional. And when they say optional, they're basically saying if we don't put them, that means it becomes minus infinity and plus infinity. And it is verified during phase 1 validations. Okay. That is, if a transaction is said to be valid only after the 5th January 2030, it can only be submitted and considered valid by the ledger after that date.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I want to read this one more time. So if it is valid only after, okay, so they're basically saying the lower bound is 5th
Lower bound
January
is
in this
50.
case,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
This is 5th January. Okay, cool.
Lower.
Uh, Similarly, if the validity interval defines an upper bound, then the transaction will sit in mempools until then. Similarly, if a validity interval defines an upper bound, then the transaction will sit in mempools until then. Why will it sit in mempools until then? Did you guys understand this specific line?
I don't particularly know the mempool sort of
So it's just a
underworking.
memory pool. You don't even have to know what a mempool is. It's just a memory pool. That means it is just the transaction is sitting there waiting for this deadline, but I don't understand it. If the validity interval defines an upper bound, so just say we are saying we have defined this upper bound and it's not positive infinity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then the transaction will sit in mempool. So that means it's just sitting until then. Why would it sit until then is what I don't understand.
I don't understand that either.
Uh, okay. I'm
Let's
gonna
continue
leave.
first.
Yeah, let's continue. It is pruned if it doesn't make it into a block by the specified date.
Like an escrow or something.
No, no, not an escrow. It's just a
Uh,
mempool. So it's a memory pool. That means it is waiting. Until
mm.
then. It is
Like an
pruned.
escrow.
If it doesn't make it,
Make it into the block by the.
yeah,
Oh, so I
yeah,
think it makes sense. So what they're saying is if the transaction doesn't pass before this deadline
it
is
is
met,
there.
then it is thrown into the bin, right? If it doesn't make it into a block, it is pruned. Pruned is removed if it
Yeah,
doesn't
Yeah.
make it into the block by the
before
specified
that
date. Yeah.
time. before
Yeah.
the
So,
upper
so
bound.
the-
Okay.
makes sense. So that
Yeah.
so okay. So I think our assumption is still correct that the transaction has to live within the validity range.
Mm.
Okay. Thereby, one can introduce a notion of time in validators through the means of a validity intervals, through the means of validity intervals. Okay. Since they are checked during phase one, a validator can assume that the transaction it validates is within the specified validity interval. Okay.
Mhm.
Hence, should you ensure that an action happens only after a specific date, you can record that date as a datum and check that the transaction's lower bound is greater than that specified date.